The next topic is about resource capabilities. We can assign certain capabilities to our resources for DataMiner to be able to pick the correct resource that is best fit for bringing up our service. By choosing a particular profile instance, we can filter down the number of resources for a particular function. Now let's dive immediately into DataMiner and show you an example of this. When I open again my bookings manager, let me create a new booking to show you. Give it a name. I choose again my satellite downlink service definition. I'll just go to the last page in the wizard. And I'll use the example of a demodulating function. If I open a demodulating function, I can specify here a particular modulation standard. This is actually a capability that is assigned to each of our modulating resources. As you can see right now in my dropdown, I have 3 available demodulating resources in London. This is for a demodulating standard DVB-S2. However, when I change this to NS3, suddenly my list of resources is limited. Only this resource is capable of demodulating an NS3 standard. So this is the perfect example of a resource capability. And if we have a look at our resources, we indeed see that our demodulating resources have a capability called standard, which is either in this case DVB-S and the DVB-S2. Now, how is this configured in DataMiner? Well, everything is configured via profiles. So if I go to the profiles app in DataMiner, I see here all my profile definitions. Remember, when we created our function, we linked each of our functions to a profile definition. Same counts also for our demodulating function. I linked my demodulating function to our profile definition called setDemodulating. Now, just to explain you the concept of profile definitions, profile instances, and profile parameters, well, we can create profile definitions, as you can see a few over here. Each profile definition contains certain profile parameters, like my demodulating profile definition contains 4 parameters: polarization, RF frequency, standard, and symbol rate. If I click on those, I'm actually navigating to the last page here in this UI. Let's go to polarization. Now I'm immediately going to the profile parameter polarization, and you can see certain possible values for this polarization parameter. Once you bundled your profile parameters into a profile definition, you can create an instance, a profile instance of that profile definition. A profile instance contains particular values for each of the parameters inside your definition. So you can create multiple profile instances from a profile definition. Now let's have another look at our profile parameter standard, our modulation standard. As you can see, there is a specific category that you can assign to a profile parameter. This one has configuration ticked and capability. Well, now we are in this topic interested in this capability checkmark. Because this checkmark is checked, that means that this standard profile parameter can be used on resources to define capabilities on them. So when I go back to my resources, we saw indeed we have here a standard capability that can be added to a resource with particular values. Well, this one is defined in the Profiles app as a profile parameter, where the checkbox capability is checked. And these are the possible values for our modulation standard. Because this profile parameter is part of our demodulating profile definition and our profile definition is linked to our function, we can filter down our all our resources, our demodulating resources, based on this capability. Inside this wizard, when you define a profile for your demodulating function, I defined here a standard dvbs. This is my capability parameter. By choosing a particular capability, it's filtering only the resources where the capability parameter matches with the one on the resource. So this is how you can filter down resources based on capabilities. Now, another example that we already saw earlier is the location. So if I go one step back in my wizard, we saw already that we can define a site, London or Paris. And by choosing our site, all the resources in the next step in our wizard are already filtered down. Also, this is by means of capabilities. Each of our resources have a capability assigned to it, the capability location. And each of the resources have it filled with either Paris or London, and this way DataMiner can immediately filter all our drop-downs and only show us the resources from that particular site. So I chose Paris. Well, each of my drop-downs are filtered on Paris. And we also see that on our resources. When I open a random resource, I see here a capability location, which is equal to London. So when I choose London in my wizard, this will be one of the resources in my drop-down because this capability is also equal to London. How is this done? Exactly the same way. We have a profile parameter with the name location. If I go to my parameters here, location, this is my parameter. It has category capability and it has two possible values, London or Paris. As soon as you have such a profile parameter, you can assign a particular location to your resource capability. Now, if I have another look at the rest of the capabilities on our demodulating resource, we see also a few others. We already saw the standard, we saw the location capability, we also have similar polarization capability, which can be vertical, horizontal, or circular. Then I also have these two over here, resource input interfaces and resource output interfaces. These are two rather special capabilities that are defined on a resource. These are mandatory, so you need the exact same capability on each of your resources. Like you need the resource input interfaces in case you have certain inputs on your function, and same for outputs. Now, what is this actually doing? Why is this mandatory? Well, you can define, in my case here, these options for my resource input interfaces. I created them myself again as a profile parameter, which you can find over here. These are the options. Why do you need them? Well, this specifies that this resource has an L-band input interface and no IP input or DTM input or ASI input, or so no, only an L-band input interface. When in your service definition you use that function and you connect the L-band interface of that block, automatically DataMiner will search for resources that have an L-band input interface, which is defined as a capability on your resource. Same for the output interfaces. You have again a profile parameter with this name. This is mandatory, where you define, look, this resource has an ASI output interface in my case. When you choose or when you use that block in your service definition and you use that ASI interface, DataMiner will search for resources that have an ASI output interface. So all the resources where this here is checked. These are mandatory. So if you forget these, your drop-downs with resources in your wizard will be empty. Now another special resource capability are these here. Resource output connections ASI and resource input connections L-band. I have this here on my London demodulator 2, my RX 8200. Now to explain what this really means, I will go back to my service definition. And in my service definition for a satellite downlink, you see that I have here my demodulating function. And before that, I have here on my L-band interface a matrix output. Now for each matrix output, I have a resource in the system. Of course, if I select here my L-band output, the one for my modulator 2 in London, my RX 8200, if I choose the resource, my matrix output here, of course I cannot choose another resource than that RX 8200. So I kind of link the output of the matrix to my demodulator, to my receiver basically, because there is a physical link between the output of my matrix and my receiver. And that is what I also define here on my resource, on my demodulating resource. I define that my L-band input is connected to the router in London, my L-band router, with it's the output RX 8202. That's my demodulator 2. So like this, I can kind of connect specific resources to each other, and by means of capabilities and also with data transfer rules, I can filter down my resources in my wizard. I will come back on this also when I speak about data transfer rule. There are a lot of other capabilities on my resources. Now, now that you know the concept of capabilities, let me quickly run through all of my functions and show you what are the capabilities that I'm using here in the use case of a satellite downlink. So from my demodulating resource, I only skipped my RF frequency. My RF frequency is just like any other. It's also a capability a profile parameter. This one is a numeric one. You see here a range of frequency from which that this demodulator can basically handle. In that case, just to show you, my parameter looks like this. I have here a type number. It's not a discrete this time, and I can specify the range, the step size, the decimals, a unit, etc. Going back to my other resources, let's start with the antenna. The antenna has a same as the others, a resource input interfaces and resource output interfaces capability. Again, this is mandatory. This one also has an antenna type capability, which can either be fixed or steerable. Also the location capability is here, and an orbital position. Now this orbital position is basically defining to what satellite the antenna is pointing. In case of a fixed antenna, this is also a fixed value for my capability, for my orbital position. If this is a steerable antenna, you can use a time-dependent capability. That's a special capability that can change over time. If tomorrow my antenna is pointed to another satellite, well, if I try to book that same antenna tomorrow, that capability will be different than today when it's looking at another satellite. So that's the time-dependent capability. The next one, decoding. Decoding has resource input and output interfaces again. I connected certain resources to each other, and it has also a location, so nothing new. Then the descrambling. The descrambling function has again input and output interfaces, the mandatory ones, also a location. This one also has an encryption type. So each receiver has a capability of descrambling in a certain way with a certain type. And then I also connect specific resources to each other. Why is that? Because my demodulating and my descrambling function can be on the same physical device. So if I choose my demodulating on an RX 8200 device, like my demodulator 1, well, I will make sure that my descrambling function is on the same device. That's like common sense. So I need to enter that information also in here in DataMiner. My generic source has also two capabilities, also the output interfaces. This one has no input interfaces capability because there is no input interface on my function. And this one also has a generic source name capability to kind of filter down our sources by channel name. Then we have our L-band input resources, again input and output interfaces. We have again an RF frequency capability. Our location is reused here. This one is similarly as for the demodulating block, is linking the L-band input interfaces with the antenna resources. And it also has a particular polarization. The output L-band interface resources, these ones have an input and an output interface, a location, and again I'm linking them to our demodulating resources. And last but not least, I also have my satellite resources. It has again an output interfaces and an input interfaces capability, and also a orbital position capability to define where in the sky you can find that satellite. Now, to finalize the topic about resource capabilities, I will go one more time to this booking wizard again, because you can see that all the capabilities that I just showed you on the resources, they are not all present here in this wizard. I just wanted to tell you that a lot of these capabilities are set in the background. And actually this is already an introduction to the next section about data transfer rules. By choosing specific resources and profiles, in the background I am setting specific capabilities to these functions, so these resources are filtered automatically.